Welcome to Infinite Universe with interesting episode. Sometimes we say things without realizing how much power our words have. We can either speak positively and bless our future, or speak negatively and unknowingly curse it. That might sound strong, but it's true. The words we speak can shape our lives. If we constantly say things like "I'm not good enough" or "nothing ever works out for me," we are inviting that negativity into our lives. But if we start saying things like "I am capable, I am strong, and I am blessed," we begin to live those truths. That idea comes from faith, the belief that what follows the words "I am" is what you're allowing into your world. Joel Osteen often talks about this. He believes that God's plan for our lives is much bigger than what we can imagine. 13 years ago, he never dreamed he'd be where he is today, sitting in a massive stadium that used to host NBA games, now transformed into a place of worship. But that's what happened. Still, there are many controversies surrounding him, especially regarding money. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Joel Osteen's church received $4.4 million in loans meant for small businesses. Critics found this troubling, especially since he lives in a $10.5 million mansion. His church reportedly spends only 1% of its income on charity. He preaches that God wants people to be rich and charges $15 for tickets to hear him speak. While his television show reaches millions, he rarely talks about sin or Jesus. Joel Osteen was born on March 5, 1963, in Houston, Texas. He grew up in a big family with 6 children, and their lives centered around church, faith, and family. His father, John Osteen, had left the Southern Baptist tradition and started a new kind of church. In 1958, when Joel's sister Lisa was born with severe disabilities, it changed everything for the family. John and his wife, Dodie, turned to faith healing and embraced charismatic Christianity. A year later, in 1959, they founded Lakewood Church in a rundown feed store with only 234 seats. But it marked the beginning of something powerful. By the late 1970s, that small church grew to over 5,000 members. Joel watched all of this unfold while growing up. Unlike his siblings, who preached or served in other ways, Joel preferred to stay behind the scenes. He didn't want attention. He graduated from Humble High School in 1981 and then went to Oral Roberts University to study radio and TV. But he dropped out after less than a year, not because he wasn't smart, but because he had a different goal. He wanted to help his dad build something meaningful at the church. At just 19, he returned to Houston and began working with the church's television ministry. He started small, with 1 local channel and 1 national network. For 17 years, he never stepped on stage. Instead, he worked behind the camera, producing, editing, directing, and managing everything from lighting to wardrobe. He learned a lot from watching and editing his father's sermons, even though he had no formal theological training. His father often asked him to preach, but Joel always said no. He preferred to support the work, not lead it. That all changed in January 1999. Joel finally agreed to preach his first sermon. 6 days later, his father passed away from a heart attack. That first sermon ended up being the last one his father ever heard. Suddenly, Joel was thrust into leadership. Lakewood Church had 6,000 members at the time. Joel didn't feel ready. He had never preached before. People doubted him. But somehow, it worked. At that time, around 8,000 people attended the church each week. By 2004, that number grew to between 25,000 and 30,000. Lakewood had become the largest church in America. Joel had a big part in that growth. He doubled the budget for television airtime, picked the best slots in big cities, and filled highways with billboards. His sermons were different too. They were simple, full of hope, and easy to understand. People connected with them. Soon, the church building with 8,000 seats wasn't enough. Joel began dreaming big. He talked about preaching to 100,000 people every weekend. Many laughed at the idea. But then came a bold move. In 2003, Lakewood signed a deal with the city of Houston to lease the former home of the Houston Rockets, the Compaq Center. It was a massive 16,000-seat sports arena. The lease cost $12 million for 30 years, with an option to extend for another 30 years at $22 million. Renovating the arena cost nearly $95 million, which would be around $158 million today. It took 15 months to complete, and the church added 5 new floors, waterfalls, carpet, rooms, studios, and classrooms. It was a complete transformation. In 2010, Lakewood bought the building for $7.5 million. But the real turning point came in 2005 when the new Lakewood Church officially opened. Every seat was filled, with 16,000 people in attendance and millions watching on TV. For many in Houston, the place where they once watched basketball games had turned into a spiritual center. The audience kept growing. Weekly attendance passed 40,000, and the TV broadcasts reached around 10 million viewers in more than 100 countries. Lakewood had become more than just a church. It was a media powerhouse, and Joel was at its center. What set Joel apart was his message. He didn't preach about sin or damnation. He talked about hope, dreams, and trusting God's plan. Some called it Christian light, but many didn't mind. They found encouragement in his positivity. He told people they weren't broken and that better days were ahead. Joel also understood the power of media. Lakewood's broadcast eventually reached 92% of American homes. Around 10 million Americans tuned in weekly, with more watching from other countries. In 2017, the church's media work cost $25 million a year, but the investment paid off. Lakewood even launched its own SiriusXM radio station. Joel began hosting Night of Hope events across the country. These weren't small gatherings. They filled stadiums. When Joel released his first book, Your Best Life Now, in October 2004, most people didn't expect it to do much. But within 3 months, it sold over 500,000 copies. By May 2005, it passed 1 million and stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for over 200 weeks. In total, the book sold over 4 million copies worldwide. It wasn't just a Christian book, it became a pop culture hit. The combination of faith, motivation, and hope appealed to a wide audience, including many who didn't attend church. Joel's writing style was friendly and easy to understand, making the book feel relatable. Joel didn't stop there. He wrote more than 15 books, with at least 7 becoming New York Times bestsellers. His 2005 book, Become a Better You, earned him $13 million in royalties. His live events were also hugely successful. He could earn between $100,000 and $200,000 for a single speech. He filled arenas all across the United States and even in other countries. He also created a large merchandise business selling books, CDs, clothes, and gifts, mostly through the church's gift shop or online. Then came his social media success. He gained 25 million followers on Facebook, 10 million on Twitter, and 5 million on Instagram. This brought even more attention, sponsorships, and income. In 2013, Joel launched a national arena tour called Night of Hope. Tickets cost around $15 each, and tens of thousands of people came to hear him speak. These events weren't just church services, they felt like concerts, with music, lights, and high energy. On March 11, 2013, over 20,000 people filled the American Airlines Arena in Miami. By 2019, Joel had even sold out Wembley Arena in London. These events changed how people viewed church gatherings. They were no longer small or limited. They had become global productions. All of this was part of Joel's larger media strategy. He didn't stick to religious channels. He went on major platforms like Oprah, Larry King Live, and Good Morning America. These appearances introduced him to audiences who had never watched Christian television or gone to church. When he spoke with Larry King in 2005 and Oprah in 2012, he faced criticism directly. He didn't focus on sin or rules but instead spoke about hope, self-belief, and success. His message was more like a motivational speaker's than a traditional preacher's, and that was intentional. Today, Joel Osteen reaches over 10 million people each week through TV and broadcasts in more than 100 countries. His podcast, social media, and public appearances all share the same message: stay positive, believe in yourself, and never give up. This approach has earned him fans from all backgrounds, religious or not. It also made him one of the most followed and watched pastors in the world. However, behind all the positivity, the numbers reveal another side. The Osteen brand brings in about $55 million each year. Lakewood Church operates with a $90 million annual budget. But only 1.3% of that, or about $1.2 million, is spent on missions and outreach. Most of the money goes towards services, media production, events, and running the church. Critics argue that this shows the focus is more on building the brand than helping those in need. And while Joel preaches abundance and purpose, many question where that abundance really goes. Joel didn't meet his future wife in a fancy event or church gathering. In 1985, he walked into a jewelry store to buy a new watch battery. Victoria, a young woman working there, helped him. She was studying psychology at the University of Houston and helping at her family's store that day. That simple interaction turned into something much more. Just 2 years later, on April 4, 1987, Joel and Victoria got married. At that time, Joel was still working behind the scenes at his father's church. He wasn't famous yet. But their marriage became the foundation for a ministry that would reach millions. Victoria brought her own unique background. Her father worked for NASA on the Saturn rocket project, and her mother was a devoted Sunday school teacher. Together, Joel and Victoria began building something that would eventually become a global spiritual movement. They have been married for nearly 40 years, and throughout that time, they have dealt with enormous pressure, constant public attention, and the heavy burden of leading one of the biggest churches in America. But everything began to change for Victoria in a small, quiet moment inside a jewelry store when she was just there to replace a watch battery. That small, simple event started a journey that changed her life completely. Victoria was born in 1961 in Huntsville, Alabama, but when she was only 2 years old, her family moved to Houston, Texas. Her childhood was strongly influenced by the Church of Christ. Her mother worked as a Sunday school teacher, and her father was a deacon in the church. As she grew up, the values and discipline of the church shaped her way of thinking and behavior. After she married Joel Osteen, she started to get involved in Lakewood Church in small ways, like helping with the offerings. But soon, her role became much bigger. In 2003, Victoria started the women's ministry at Lakewood Church. It grew very quickly and became one of the largest parts of the church's outreach. Today, it reaches thousands of women each year. Her presence on stage also grew stronger, becoming just as powerful and meaningful as Joel's. She connected with the audience deeply through her words, energy, and faith. She also became a best-selling author. Her first book, Love Your Life, came out in 2008. It had a first print run of 750,000 copies and reached number 2 on the New York Times bestseller list. That was an impressive achievement, especially for someone who had once worked quietly in retail. There is a saying that if you don't heal from emotional wounds, you can end up hurting people who had nothing to do with your pain. That idea connects strongly with Victoria's personal journey. From being a woman behind a jewelry counter to becoming one of the most well-known female pastors in the United States, her story is one of courage, growth, and incredible strength. She didn't just walk behind Joel on his path, she helped build that path side by side with him. Their children, Jonathan and Alexandra, were raised in the heart of this world. Jonathan was born on April 20, 1995, and Alexandra on November 9, 1998. Both of them grew up in the spotlight of Lakewood Church, and neither one stayed in the background. Jonathan studied radio, television, and film at the University of Texas at Austin and graduated in 2017. But even before that, he was already leading worship at Lakewood as a teenager. By 2016, both he and Alexandra were performing music in front of huge crowds, sometimes as many as 45,000 people at events like America's Night of Hope in San Francisco. Jonathan began writing songs and producing music for Lakewood's young adult ministry. Then in 2019, he preached his first sermon on Father's Day. Alexandra also became well known for her music. She took on the role of lead vocalist for Lakewood's worship band LYA. Their songs, like I've Got a Fire, reached hundreds of thousands of listeners on streaming platforms like Spotify. Her voice became a vital part of Lakewood's music ministry, making worship a powerful experience for many. Lakewood Church and Joel Osteen's message are often tied to the word of faith and prosperity gospel movements. These teachings suggest that if people believe strongly enough, speak positively, and fully trust in God, they will receive the blessings they desire, whether it's money, good health, or happiness. Joel once said, "God's will for you is to pay your bills, not be in debt, and to live in health all the days of your life." His followers loved hearing that message, but many critics were disturbed by it. Lakewood Church attracts more than 40,000 people every week, and millions more watch the services on television. Joel Osteen himself has an estimated net worth between $40 million and $60 million. That made many people wonder, if the message is about faith, why does it seem to benefit one person so much? Critics argued that this version of the gospel twisted the original message of Christianity. Instead of teaching people to follow Jesus through struggles and suffering, it seemed to tell them they could speak wealth and health into existence by simply believing hard enough. If someone was poor or sick, the implication was that it was their fault for not having enough faith. Joel Osteen also did not talk much about sin, hell, or the need to repent. He admitted that he preferred to focus on positive topics to help people become better versions of themselves. His sermons sounded more like motivational talks, and his books sold in the millions. But many theologians warned that this kind of teaching left out the most important parts of Christianity. They called it a cotton candy gospel, sweet, easy, and attractive, but without any deep spiritual substance. Some religious scholars and leaders were especially vocal. Professor Michael Horton called Osteen's message heresy. The well-known theologian J.I. Packer said that ignoring repentance was a serious warning sign. They said it made religion about what people could get instead of who they worshipped. It encouraged a mindset where people believed they could sin freely because they were already covered by Christ's righteousness. Critics pointed out Bible verses where Jesus clearly warned against living a life focused only on gaining possessions. Despite the criticism, Joel Osteen continued to grow in popularity. Even the way Lakewood Church handled important Christian traditions like communion and baptism drew attention. For a long time, critics claimed that Lakewood didn't perform these rituals regularly or with enough clarity. That raised concerns that the church was moving away from its sacred roots. In 2025, the church did hold a mass baptism event where hundreds of people were baptized at once. But it still didn't match the traditional way other churches approached these sacred acts. Joel's preaching style was also very different. He never used notes and memorized every sermon. He practiced each one like an actor preparing for a performance. His sermons were smooth and always timed to be exactly 27 minutes long to fit television schedules. This helped make him very popular, but it also made other pastors nervous. They felt he didn't quote the Bible enough and that his invitations for people to accept Jesus were rushed and shallow. His father, John Osteen, had been known for deep Bible-based preaching, and by comparison, Joel's messages seemed more like entertainment. In 2020, criticism reached a new level. During the pandemic, Lakewood Church accepted a $4.4 million loan from the federal government through the Paycheck Protection Program. This money was meant to help small businesses survive. But Lakewood Church had an annual budget of $90 million, and Joel Osteen personally was worth tens of millions. People were outraged. The church said that none of the money went to Joel or Victoria and that it was used for staff salaries. They later returned the full amount, but by then, public trust had been damaged. The incident started a nationwide discussion about churches, money, and how much financial support they should get from the government. One of the most shocking discoveries came later. Reports showed that Lakewood Church spent only 1.3% of its $90 million budget on missions and outreach, just $1.2 million. Meanwhile, over $25 million went to their television ministry, $31.7 million went to weekly services, and millions more were used for administration, fundraising, and events. Many people felt this proved what they had feared: Lakewood was more of a media empire than a church. Joel Osteen claimed he hadn't taken a salary from the church since 2004. His fortune, which is estimated to be between $50 million and $100 million, came from selling books and giving paid speeches. His first book, Your Best Life Now, sold more than 4 million copies. He and Victoria lived in a $10.5 million mansion in Houston and owned another home worth $3 million. Despite the success, controversy continued to follow him. In 2011, an electronic music group sued Lakewood and the Osteens for using their song without a license. They asked for $3 million in damages. Lakewood argued it was a mistake, and in 2012, a judge sided with the church. But the case showed how large and complicated the business side of the ministry had become. One of the biggest problems was the lack of transparency. In the US, churches don't have to report their finances to the IRS like other charities do. This means that churches can take in millions of dollars tax-free and never have to explain how they spend it. Some pastors own private jets and live in luxury, while their members know little about where their donations go. Even when churches like Lakewood do release financial reports, much of the money appears to go toward media and salaries, with only a small portion dedicated to helping the needy. This secrecy led to intense criticism, especially in times of crisis. In August 2017, when Hurricane Harvey hit Houston, many homes were flooded, and thousands of people needed shelter. Lakewood Church was large, dry, and had room for 16,000 people. But its doors remained closed. The church claimed it was flooded and inaccessible, but people nearby posted pictures showing that the streets around the church were dry. Social media erupted with anger. Hashtags like #OpenLakewoodChurch spread quickly. Even celebrities joined in the criticism. Days later, the church finally opened, but by then, the damage to its reputation had already been done. In 2025, another disaster, Hurricane Beryl, hit. Power went out, and the heat became unbearable. Lakewood distributed 40,000 bottles of water and gave out food. Joel Osteen tweeted a prayer for the people of Texas, but many said that wasn't enough. They still remembered the slow response during Hurricane Harvey. Jokes and memes spread, asking if Joel was locking the doors again. There were even more serious events. In 2014, a family accused a church usher of throwing their baby's car seat off a pew, causing the 18-month-old to fall face-first. The family was traumatized and later left the state. Lakewood denied any wrongdoing but paid $15,000 to settle the case. People began asking how a church so large could ensure the safety of everyone who walked through its doors. Then came a horrifying moment. On February 11, 2024, a woman named Janice Yvonne Moreno walked into Lakewood Church with an AR-15 rifle and her 7-year-old son. She claimed to have a bomb in her backpack. At 1:53 p.m., she began shooting in a hallway, firing about 30 bullets. A 47-year-old man was hit. Police at the church shot back and killed Moreno. But in the chaos, her son Samuel was also shot in the head. Samuel needed 2 emergency surgeries. Doctors removed part of his skull and a large portion of his brain's frontal lobe. For weeks, he was too weak to even check for brain activity. His grandmother gave updates online. Samuel was taken off a ventilator after 13 days and went to live with his grandmother until she passed away the following year. A 57-year-old volunteer was also shot in the hip but survived. The tragedy stunned everyone. Lakewood has a security team. Every week, around 45,000 people attend the church. But Moreno walked in with 2 guns and a bag full of weapons. She pointed a gun at an unarmed guard and got inside. The off-duty police eventually stopped her, but it was too late. Surveillance videos showed how easily she entered. Moreno had a long history of mental illness and criminal behavior. Her rifle had a Palestine sticker, and her writings praised terror groups. Still, she bought her weapon legally in Texas, which has no red flag laws. After the shooting, Joel Osteen told the church to stay strong in faith. He prayed for the victims and even for Moreno. Some people found comfort in his words, but others wanted more. They wanted action against gun violence and better laws. Samuel's grandmother begged lawmakers to act. Other religious leaders supported her. But Osteen focused on moving forward. For many, that wasn't enough. The investigation lasted a year. In February 2025, the case went to the district attorney, and a grand jury was formed. They weren't just looking at the shooter. They were looking at everything: how the church reacted, how security failed, and how the system allowed a dangerous person to legally buy a weapon. Even before the shooting, Maurino's former in-laws had warned the church and authorities, but nothing had been done. That failure cost them dearly. Samuel's injury symbolized the consequences of silence and inaction. Trust in Lakewood was shaken once again. And there's another problem. Lakewood is growing older not just in years, but in the people who attend. Fewer young people are going to church. Only 16% of millennials attend church regularly. For Gen Z, it's just 15%, the lowest in American history. These younger generations want meaning, but they don't find it in large churches or polished sermons. They want honesty, community, and action. The message of prosperity doesn't speak to them. They are turning to smaller groups, digital spaces, and real conversations instead. For Joel and Victoria Osteen, their journey has been long and filled with both triumph and controversy. From a small watch battery to a global ministry, from best-selling books to hurricanes and heartbreak, their story reflects both the power and the limits of modern faith leadership. Thanks for watching. Keep it and stay tuned. Like and subscribe our channel. Have a good day.